The session 12, technical session 12. Very good afternoon again. So we will start this session on building trust at scale, fraud prevention in digital payments. Before we start the session, may I request everyone standing behind, could you please come ahead and take your seats? Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we'll go into this session 12 to lead and moderate the session. May I request Ms. Sumita Kale to take the stage, Chief Executive Officer from Indicus Foundation. And also welcome fellow panelists, Ma'am Ms. Padma Jaiswal, IAS, Secretary, Government of NCT Delhi. Welcome, please. Mr. Jatinder Handu, Chief Executive Officer, Unified FinTech Forum. Round of applause, please. Mr. Udis Ullas, Chief Operating Officer, Muthoot Microfinance Limited. And Mr. Saibel Paul, Deputy Director from Sadhan. I'm sure the session is going to be very interesting and insightful. Now over to Sumita. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? It's okay. Great. So, welcome to this session, and thanks a lot to Access for putting this event together. We have an absolutely stellar panel from different perspectives, and it's a very critical, I think it's kind of an emergent, on the toes kind of a discussion, a topic for the day, which is building trust at scale, fraud prevention in digital payments. Okay, the hall isn't very full, but I just want to know from you, how many of you have received some kind of, approach that made you suspicious on a digital platform? Everyone. Everyone, great. Okay, and do you know anyone personally who's been a victim of this fraud, who's gone through this? Yes? Okay. Okay, so now confessions. A couple of years ago, I went into one of these calls, and I went into it as much as I thought was safe enough for me to go, which actually wasn't very safe, and I genuinely felt quite scared because there was somebody at the other end who was saying that he was Maharashtra police and my number had been used for some, and I was basically going to go to jail, and there was an FIR and everything. So I did go to the police station after that. I'm in Pune. So I went to the police station after that to report that number. But she said that since I hadn't made a payment, there was no fraud really, and therefore my issue wasn't, that number from where that had come wasn't, taken, nothing was done about that number. That's a couple of years ago, and since then a lot of things have changed. Like now you have, there is a helpline where you can report these suspicious numbers. TRAI, RBI, they've all put together a whole bunch of measures which we will be talking about to make, the whole system a little bit safer. But I think the 3 points before we start to begin is, if you look at the Reserve Bank data, it says that the incidence of fraud actually has been declining. The value of digital payments at banks, fraud, fell to 520 crores in FY25 with 13,000 odd transactions compared to 1457 crore the year before and 29,000 odd transactions the previous year. But we know that the RBI is taking this very seriously, and Deputy Governor Ravi Shankar just the other day, he said that we have to be constantly vigilant because we can't have zero fraud. But even a low incidence of fraud is devastating for the victims who are actually going through that whole session. And I know personally how my heart rate raised even though I knew what I was doing, but it is quite scary. Second thing is UPI is expanding very rapidly in smaller towns and in smaller segments of people. It's made our life so much easier. But we find that our victims, the ones who actually go through with this, include educated professionals with a fair amount of money has been exchanging hands. And they're profiles who you would not consider as being vulnerable, ordinarily. So, and all these people are falling prey to the fraudsters. All because it's become so easy to just, with a click, press something and send money out of your bank out to somebody else without personally meeting anybody and getting a sense of who they are. And thirdly, of course, with digitization, AI, and all the new tech, the fraudsters are getting much smarter, and they are, they are also evolving at the same time. So it's not like old methods are not being used anymore. I think Jamtara managed to get a lot of, people aware of one system, and then they started with something else. So the question for us today is, how does the ecosystem, as a whole, stay one step ahead and safe for all of us? And we have experts from three different perspectives. There's microfinance, there's fintech, and there's the government. So all of us, everybody in the room and in the panel, we have the customer, the consumer at the center and at the core of our, at our heart of what we want to do. And we all understand why we need to build trust at scale. So I'll just begin with a fundamental question that all consumers have is, who is responsible to keep me safe? That is the question. And I'll start with you, Jatinder, because there are multiple stakeholders in this whole room and in the ecosystem, is how should the responsibility be balanced, or how do you see this? Because there are fintechs, there are banks, there are NBFCs, there are consumers, everybody has some kind of a role to play. So how do you see this responsibility moving out?
No, thanks, Sumita. I think you have set up the context aptly, with the RBI comments on frauds. And yes, all of us at some point in time have some kind of experience, or at least, brush up with these fraudsters. And then this question emerges that who is responsible and what is the responsibility of different stakeholders. So I would classify, stakeholders into three broad buckets. One is, of course, digital financial service providers or financial service providers. Second is, of course, regulators who have their own, mechanism and guardrails to mitigate this kind of a risk. And third is, of course, government. Obviously, you can't have first line of defense against an organized crime. You can't have a customer as a, first line of defense. So I remember, and as I was discussing backstage with you, I think in 2013-14, there was a report by Dr. Nachiket Moore, where probably, this concept of principle of product suitability was introduced. So I think the first responsibility against the coordinated, organized cybercrime or fraud rests with the service providers. And at least I can talk about fintech companies. Most of them are, putting up their investments and then their different schemes which are there in place. So, and although there's a lot that needs to be done. As far as regulator is concerned, I think regulatory guardrails are adequately there. However, since, it is something like dynamic response against dynamic challenges, because cyber security related issues and frauds are dynamic. So you can't have a static response to a dynamic problem. So there are, master directions that have come from RBI, like resilience in cyber security for payment service providers, similarly for non-banks and banks. So there are adequate, even outsourcing guidelines. So those things are there. And of course, digital lending guidelines and so on and so forth. As far as government is concerned, there is a large depth of seriousness and intent which has been displayed. I think I would allude to a standing committee report, which Ministry of Finance standing committee report, which came up last year, and it, lucidly, covered the entire spectrum of this issue. So, as I would sum it up, probably there is a eclectic responsibility of all relevant stakeholders. However, citing that customer, sometimes it happens, customer ne aisa kyun kar diya, there will be behavior kind of a thing. So that's a modus operandi. So, the fraudsters might not be able to hack a secure system, but they definitely hack behavior of a user. But again, we know this. So there's a responsibility for, all three relevant stakeholders to, mitigate this. I'll pause there. Thank you.
Thanks. So, Shaival, how do you see this from the microfinance sector? There are changes happening from the industry and also from the consumer side. I think you were talking about this.
Right.
People are evolving on both sides. So, what are the changes that you are seeing?
See, there are two, three things. When your first question is that who is responsible, the responsibility always goes to the consumer. That consumer has to be, I'm telling you, that's true too. That consumer has to be very much oriented, aware about the things, and they have to be always, I mean, there has to be always a capacity building initiative from the government, from the business, from the other agencies. We have to do that one. There is no other way. So always, it boils down to the customer. So they have to be taking care of themselves. They, in this world, when we are seeing a lot of this, all these, frauds and everything going on, they have to be careful, very careful. If they are getting into the I come from the financial fraternity. So if they are getting into the financial fraternity, they have to be careful. Now, who will make them aware? That's the question. This is one thing I really like because as you were telling, I have a friend who is a professor of mathematics of a central university, was captivated for 2 days. This what do you call it? Digital arrest. For 2 days and 22 lakhs being transferred. Thankfully, that account has been somehow blocked already. So the money they had got back after 4 months of legal case and all those things. So if you are not careful, now who will make you careful? That's the thing. So government, business, they have to make them careful. Second thing, what I'm also seeing over the period of time, in microfinance, this is almost, it is a 30 years work, structured work of microfinance. So I'm seeing now the third generation is coming into the as a client of microfinance. Now they are much more aware about the thing. They may not be doing the transaction, financial transaction, but they may be watching your YouTube, they may be watching your reels, and in those reels, lot of this information, wrong information also comes, but this kind of good information also come. I'm seeing that they are much more aware. The third thing, when I'm talking about those clients, the third thing also, as their third generation, they're little bit aware about the things that this may happen, this may not happen. It is also easy for us to build up their capacity, which Sadhan is doing from our onset of like 25 years. We are developing the capacities of the institutions, also the clients. So we are into it as well. So industry body has their own responsibility and also initiatives to do that one. So everything, but clients, they need to be very careful about the things, and we have to make them aware.
Okay, thank you for that. I think it was some cold water on all of us that we are responsible for our own choices. But Udesh, if I can come to you, what are you doing, from your company? Are there any, operational processes that you have that you could tell us about?
Sure. First of all, thank you, Access, for having me here today, and thanks, ma'am, for asking this. I think the responsibility, the first question you are asked, who will take the responsibility if something goes wrong? When it comes to our segment, we feel that the primary responsibility belongs to us, we as a lender. Why? Because I'm saying this, for people like us, we know there is fraud happening across, but for us, this is experience. We will learn and we will move on. I don't think we will ever stop digital transaction, even though we know that there is a risk involved. But the segment we deal with is like a low-income household or a first-time borrower. For them, a fraud means it's very devastating. They may shy away from doing digital transaction forever. There is possibility. So it is our responsibility to ensure that there is a proper digital literacy to be provided. And how we can do that, there is two parts to it. One is prevention and other one is resolution. The prevention is largely connected to the responsible financing you do. When it comes to digital, it's not only payments. So we are living in an era of digital credit ecosystem. So every credit underwriting is happening using technology. So you have to make sure that whatever technology you use it should be there to be known for the customer as well, be it e-KYC or be it the penny drop you do, whatever, the liveness check you do for the customers. They should be taught about it. It's not that somebody go to their house and do some transaction, say that it's for getting a loan. That should not be the case. It should be taught to them properly and say that this is why we are doing this, to increase the accuracy of credit underwriting and to understand why we are doing this. That will give you a lot of possibility to prevent this fraud to happen and create literacy to them. The next part is the resolution. So when you do the digital transaction, it's like a lot of trust is required. Why somebody should transfer money to your bank account, especially this segment I'm talking. I'm coming from a microfinance segment. So when we started even doing digital collection for our customer, the biggest resistance from customer is that they are not habitual to it. They are habitual to provide cash, getting physical receipt from the loan officer. When we asked them to, can you do a digital transaction, they said, we are not uh, believing in that. What will happen my money? If I transacted, it won't come to, it won't credit to the my loan account. What will happen? And we know if it is delay or a server issue, it will come back to my savings account within 24 hours. But these customers, they don't know. They said, okay, my money has gone. I transfer you maybe what, 500,000 rupees. It didn't credit to my loan account. Where this has gone? So that is where the resolution part, the grievance redressal, even though it is 24 hours, we need to communicate to the customer properly in their language. Be it SMS, be it a call to the customer and say that no need to worry, your money will come back to you, and share that communication seamlessly so that they will gain the confidence. That is very, very important for scaling this digital transaction. Otherwise, whatever hard work we did over the years in the financial inclusion space, that will erode. So this is for a microfinance companies is critical that we gain the confidence of the customer and create that trust. So I think that is where we take actions. We have done several things like we have a customer app which has been there to customer to know their repayment history. They can communicate to the central office seamlessly without any help of a loan officer or a third man in that sense. So these are certain steps we have taken over the years to gain the confidence of the customer and build that trust.
Great, thanks. So since you spoke about prevention and resolution as two separate parts, I'll come to Padma Jaiswal ma'am. That ultimately people look to the recourse, they look to the government. The government is responsible to keep me safe. So can you give us a sense of how government at different levels, the center, the state, there's local authorities, everybody is included, and the regulators, how are they coordinating and handling all these challenges? And also any interesting state level insights that you have on either fraud prevention or incidents, because you have vast experience across all the states. Thanks.
Thank you, Samita, for your question, and good afternoon to everyone. So, previous to coming to Delhi, I have worked in Puducherry and also in Goa. So, the problem these days is that government has really launched digitization in a very rapid manner, very quickly, 4G, 5G, and then everything has gone to the digital platforms. So last mile connectivity, diversity, inclusion, and empowerment, all of that is coming through digital inclusion and digital, empowerment. Everything is linked to digitalization. So when the things are catching up at such a fast pace, the technology is being, inculcated in the society for the growth and development for the goals of the Viksit Bharat in such a, wide scale in very rapid manner. Now things are that India is a very diverse country, and maybe all the sections, all the society, all the stakeholders of the society are not able to keep pace with it. Though these are very exciting times, everybody is using UPI. The scale of UPI transactions are in billions and also in millions. So people are very, very smooth with these gadgets and we are so mobile friendly, and everything is being done with the help of mobile transactions. But the thing is that we have to also keep in pace with the security aspect of it. The security element has to be seen. Now, while I was working at the cutting edge level, with the self-help groups and with all kind of farmers association, FPOs, producer organizations, what I have seen is that government is, these days, they are transferring their money to the account of a lady as a part of social welfare scheme. Because lady is considered, the women is considered as a unit holder in whose accounts, in whose Jandhan accounts, government is transferring the money of the social welfare schemes. It is not the man, it is the lady of the family. Now the ladies, they are not very smooth with the digital assets. Now what is happening is that all these kind of social engineering, all these kind of authorization push payments which these bad guys are using, now they are somehow using this generative AI and LLM models to really sound like, regional a regional, kind of drama with those people, and they use urgency, they use trust, and they also use fear. These three elements are being used so as to make the person only operate for them. So likewise, I am only operating, the money for the bad guys, and I'm transferring the money myself. So this is how, things are being done at a very high level. Social engineering has reached very high level stages. So therefore, now this is the era of instant settlement. Now when 5 to 6 years back, when I was going to the bank or when I was using certain transaction, online banking transaction, what was happening is that, the settlement used to take some time. Even if I am not satisfied after entering into the settlement, I will raise an alarm and I will get the alerts and get back to my banker and say, please drop this transaction. But now it is not happening. It is very instant. So therefore, the limit of bankers, I think there are many bankers in the panel, it is about 50 seconds. Within 50 seconds, they have to overhaul their back end and front end operations so that they can analyze and they can, make real-time analysis of the transaction, whether it is fake, it is going in the fake hands, or whether it is going into genuine hands. The transaction is fake or whether the transaction is genuine. So this is the challenge with which these bankers are having at this point in time, because they are the first line of defense. Now you were saying that whose responsibility is the major responsibility, and the panelists said that it is the financial institutions. Yes, the first line of defense lies with fintechs. Lies with the financial institutions, that within the limit of 50 seconds, they have to see and they have to analyze that, whether the transaction is fake or whether it is genuine. So this is the challenge which is being posed before us. So now when this panel is about trust. Trust is that when it is creating a lot of hindrances, these kind of, trillions of transactions, the trillions of these kinds of, like hacking industry is about trillion industry economy. And what is happening is that it is eroding the trust of the people, because I am a landless woman in working in a farmland, and I am receiving some amount of money from the government, and all of a sudden some person is pushing me into, transferring that money. I have lost everything. The money which is given to me by the government or anybody, I have given everything to those bad guys. So therefore, my trust, takes a setback and it receives a fallout. I don't even trust, the formal systems. So now what is happening is that we have to engage. I think you will ask me in the subsequent, session that how do we solve it. So we have to use generative AI. We have to use LLM models. The bank have to revitalize their systems. They have to rejuvenate. They have to make it more, sensitive, and they have to use more structured and unstructured data analysis, real-time analysis, and the benchmark is 50 seconds.
So this is really interesting. So it's like when you make a credit card transaction, for instance, which is of a higher value than what you normally do, you do get a call from your bank saying, to accept or to reject that you have made one, something like that. So maybe something like that could be also integrated with are you okay? those are you safe? Are you okay? Are you you're really making this call out or making this transaction out of? You do get messages also now saying you're transferring this for the first time. First time you've used this number. Are you sure those messages are coming up now on our system when we use GPay or whatever, saying that this is not a person you normally talk to or you normally interact with. So these kind of alerts are now slowly coming into the system. But again, like we're saying, that if you're talking about somebody who's not aware of these messages, is not reading, doesn't understand the context, and still gets pulled into the fraud, then it gets even more challenging. So I'll come to Jatinder again, okay, because fintechs are the innovating, nimble, agile ones. Everyone's going to be looking at you for solutions kinds. But can you tell us what's happening in, I think, third-party and API risks you had flagged as something which is emerging as a challenge?
No, thank you very much. I think, the entire model of financial services now, not just fintech, but even, banks, you see, they are dependent upon or they partner with a lot of third-party service providers, technology service providers. And of course, the connection which happens through APIs. But before I, reach there, I think, there were diversity of views regarding, the responsibility. But short, I want to add a 30-second piece on that. What we are talking about is that we are fighting against a coordinated effort. If there is a fear, there's a greed, there is a sense of urgency, it's being induced, in an organized fashion. So, customer being, obviously vulnerable to these things. So that's what I wanted to, put on the table because, service providers are aware of this. They have wherewithals. They have access to adequate technologies. So again, there's a bigger role for service providers there rather than because this is being induced, organized. Now, as far as APIs are concerned, not just APIs, but any technology, because especially when we talk about fintech, the entire model is just like an onion. There are different layers of onion, and then different service providers, right from customer onboarding to underwriting and reaching out to customer, recovery, telecalling, everything. Most of functions, and I would say rather than non-critical functions, they are being outsourced. And that's why it's so fast. And of course, there are guidelines and regulations for that. One aspect where APIs have been in limelight is because for this fake app loans. There was a time, 2 years back when there was this menace, and it still prevails, But there's a lot of work which we have done, and other stakeholders have also done, along with, proper agencies, including Reserve Bank of India, I4C, law enforcement authorities, and also with the, app stores, whether it's a Play, Android Play Store or a iOS or a Samsung. So most of these apps are being identified and they are delisted from these app stores. Now what happens is, again, induced behavior. They'll send an APK file to your WhatsApp message, and then supported by a small reel saying ki, you get quick money, download an app. You basically circumvent the app store. And then definitely humans being humans, they fall to that, theek hai, I'll get a quick money, and then mostly new to credit customers, they fall into that trap. But I'll be very concise here. I think there are guardrails in place, and I do not deny the role of, education and digital literacy. But let us also agree that what are you up against? We are against AI, which is a rogue AI, I would suggest. You are against, deep fakes. You are against rogue bots, voice clones. So ordinarily, it's very difficult for a Aam Aadmi to, identify, and so I'll pause here on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Chaval, you were also talking about dummy apps, I think, as emerging
Yes, I
problems.
was also talking about dummy apps and also keyword code, also the link. They will call the customer and tell that they're faking their identity, impersonating the identity that I'm calling from this one. Then we are sending you a link, you will send it. Fortunately, what happens that not a big segment of microfinance loan is coming back, like getting the return is not from through your digital. That's a savings race, which is not good. Actually, we have to increase that one. But there is also like a lot of assisted models, like the loan officers, the like what you call repayment, they are going there and they are assisting the client to get it. But the fake apps nowadays, I mean, we are seeing every now and then some fake apps are coming in the name of the institution. And these people, these poor people, they do not understand that which one is the right one, which is the wrong one, and they fall into the trap. So link was there, then your this QR code is there, then all these things are there. And we work with government, we work with your Reserve Bank of India, to and also like this your what do you call it? This Google, where we download the things. So we remove it from them, but it is repeated. It is not a static that ek bar ho gaya to bas. It's not like that. It is coming on and on and on. So this is one of the things. Sumita, what to possibly where we miss the thing is it is very much supply side driven. Like the business entities, like government, like they're doing the things, but it is not really demand side driven. We do not, in many cases, we do not know that, we do not try to understand what do the customers need, how do they need these SMS. Tell me one thing, that how many times do you read these SMSs while you're transacting the thing. We do not do that one. In our case, we do not do that one. How come we are thinking that these poor people who are half educated, they will look at it? So it is not only what, it is also how do we push the things, how do we, what do you call, seep the things, how this information, these capacities into their system. So we have to take care of that one. And the third thing is possibly what all of us we are dealing with, that, ma'am was also talking about, that the trust building. In my, I can give you my example. Being an aware person, when this Paytm was starting, there was a limit of 20,000 for the receiver, that beyond that they cannot receive. So I have transferred the money, it has been deducted from my account, and then it was not received by that person, that shopkeeper. And then I thought, in my life, I'm never ever going to do this one. Now, in case of poor people, if they lose 100 rupees, they won't be coming into the system, what ma'am was also telling. So it is it is also how we need to do it, and we have to build up the trust as well. As you know that microfinance sector very well. So microfinance sector, we do the genuine business, we try to do, because the clients are our asset. So we try to do that one, but sometimes we need to do more, a bit more. That's for sure.
Okay, that's interesting.
But
Actually,
continuous work on
Yeah.
that one.
so even this thing about not being credited to by the receivers, kind of to some extent solved with the box, saying that the payment has been made to people in the shops, for instance. So the payer and the paid know that the money has been received. So that, I think, was a useful, very, very useful invention. I don't know whether it's uniquely Indian or, but it definitely has worked for everyone. Udish, coming back to what Shyaval was talking about. So for microfinance, there is always, like you were mentioning, a human connect with your person, but there is going to be increasing digitization. So how do you see it going forward? Would it still be a part of educating the customer, hand-holding them throughout? Like he mentioned, dummy apps coming. Suppose there's another Muthoot Microfin app going on and you don't even know about it. How do you handle that?
Yeah, ma'am. For us, I think this is evolving. Yes, we are a 14 trillion kind of a digital economy, but still, for a microfinance space, the poor people who live the bottom part of the economy, it is evolving. For them, it's mostly aspirational. They wanted to do this transaction, they want to learn it. We used to say that maybe 10, 15 years before, when we do microfinance, we used to train our customers how to sign in a paper. Right now, we are training them on how to download an app, how to do a transaction, get a confirmation or a SMS or a call. But still, I think right now what we are doing is an assisted model. I think Saibal sir has also talked about it. We are not throwing away the app and asking the customer to do it everything their own. So what we are doing is that we go to the customer place, we'll show them how to download, how to do this transaction. And over a period, maybe we started this very aggressively from post-COVID, because that is another lesson we learned, because we have to train our customer on digital literacy as well, not only the financial literacy. So what is happening in this space now, that once they do it and they become habitual, then the good part with our customers is that then it will become a practice for them. They once we gain their confidence, then they are not shying away to do this. They are very confidently and proudly say that I'm doing a digital transaction with your company. I'm doing a collection. I'm applying loan using your app. I'm calling your head office using your app. So that's the kind of confidence we wanted to build in, and it will evolve. As you rightly said, there will be, we have seen scams like fake QR code. Even the local persons in there are going to customer, showing a fake QR, asking them to transact. But that is where the resolution comes to play a pivotal role. Then we have to, even if it is their mistake, we have to take that cost. We will take that, okay, don't worry about that. We will fight for you. We will file a case against those people. We will stand for you. Because that is when they have the confidence on you, and then only they will transact again. Otherwise, as I said earlier also, they will shy away from it. So as an organization, it's evolving for us as well, and for the customer we deal with. That is why we put Digital literacy training is one major part of our operations. We do campaigns. We done a major campaign called Parivartan post-COVID because it's a behavioral change also. Even though they have the app, they know the knowledge, but it's a behavioral change. They very convenient using cash. So the moment we are asking them to do digital, there were apprehensions initially. So this will evolve over the period, and I think this segment is going to contribute to your digital economy more and more in the coming days.
Okay, that's really interesting. So he's talking about digital literacy and consumer awareness. Again, we come back to that. So I'll come back to Padma ma'am to ask, what have you seen across states from state governments? Do you see any different initiatives or best practices that can be emulated by others or from other countries, for instance, something that we could take up here?
Yes. Actually, this is a challenge of regaining the trust in the system. That people have, some people at the ground edge or the cutting edge level, what they have experienced out of all these days, that they have been spoofed and they have been, they are defrauded by the people around them. So in order to retain the trust, it is not just only the one institution or one policy or one regulatory organizations who are responsible for such kind of retaining or regaining their trust back. The retrieval of the trust is a multi-pronged strategy, and which involves regulatory organizations, it involves technology, it involves policy, it involves service providers, and it involves fintech, and also the consumer awareness. Now we say that government has floated various digital warriors in the field. Those engineering students who are doing the internship at the engineering level, during their internship training, they go to the field and they ask the people to log into the government website and to take the advantage of the schemes and programs. So these all things are going on, but still the consumer or still the beneficiary, the targeted beneficiary, their trust has to be regained in the system. And how it has to be done? It has to be multiple states are doing their own exercise as per the availability of the funds and as per the availability of the various kind of resources with them. So few states what they are doing is that they have created a fund, consumer protection fund, and they have also modified their consumer laws, and so as to be in line, that any losses which is incurred by the person due to this particular kind of process, the bad guys he has become a victim to this kind of social engineering process. So what has the government, government reimburses it. Government gives the liability back to the person or a beneficiary. So this is one. In some cases, the government has made the whole digital system very much smooth. There are no authentication. There is no multiple authentication in the system. If you want to log into the government systems, you are totally free to do it. It is done through digital warriors. That it is made totally frictionless. So, but likewise, the things are being done as per the availability of the funds with the government or as per the availability of their digital infrastructure on the digital space. But things are very, uneven and patchy across this country. Some cities, some states are doing very well, whereas some states are really lagging behind and they have to catch up. But the thing is that, the digital infrastructure is being created in a massive way in India. The UPI transactions, account for about half of the total digital transaction of the whole world. So UPI transaction in India only, it is a massive volumes. So therefore, we have to do, like when we talk about the developed places, for example, MasterCard, Visa, or some other kind of, very evolving private sector, they have already engaged generative AI and AI into their systems, and they're already looking into the system and doing real-time analysis. They have shifted all their AI, the edge at the edge level, through the software, various softwares and applications. But at first, for the other people, they are operating still through servers. They're operating still to their control systems. So these various kind of evolutions is happening. But then the government recently, what RBI has come out with the policy is that they have done the multi-factor authentication, in which not only these kind of, like my logins or password or OTP, but the non-OTP authentication has to be done in the form of my voice test, iris scanning, or maybe the fingers printing test, or maybe my voice, or the photograph or the facial recognition test. So all these kind of, like non-OTP tests have to be done in order to authenticate my verification. Because these days, so much of my data is lying in the social media. People can spoof up my identity. They can create synthetic identities. They can create the, synthetic or the false accounts, and they can log into my system. Now, it is the challenge of the system to see whether as to these spoof identities and these kind of fake identities or the fake digital assets which is logging to my account, are they real or are they just fake? So this is upon the system to analyze it. So this is a big challenge, but then the government is trying the multi-pronged strategy to retain the trust of the beneficiaries so that the equity, justice and social justice can be regained in the system.
Do you find any specific segments which are more difficult or so say more challenging to
Yes,
actually talk
yes,
to?
the landless laborers, the migratory laborers, the immigrants, and maybe the women also. Women laborers, who are the beneficiaries of the schemes of the programs of the government. Because these days, government are only repatriating the money in the accounts of the women. So now we have seen so many instances where they through the social engineering methods, where they have been pushed. These women have been pushed towards account themselves only transferring the accounts. For example, they will receive the call that your son has got met with an accident and we are taking him to the hospital. So please put this much of account in our the money into our account. So they are this is a kind of thing which I will or everybody will fall into a kind of emotional. They are blackmailing emotionally to make you authorize them and to push the money payment into their accounts. So it is like that. So many instances are like that which is happening, and sometimes the people are switching back to the cash economy rather than they were switching into the digital. So the trust has to be regained. Now the MHA Ministry of Home Affairs these days, they have created a fund also so as to reimburse those people who have become victims to such kind of a fraud of social engineering. So likewise, this particular point has been copied from the Australian system. Australian system, in that country, they have set up this kind of a fund so as to they can reimburse the liability and they can give some protection to those beneficiaries and to those consumers. And likewise, I think as per their data, 72% of the trust has been regained in the system.
That's really gratifying to hear because the example you gave is such an emotional one.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to be running around finding out what to do. You just instantly do
Yes,
transfer the
and
money.
moreover, the behavior data also stays with the service providers. For example, if I am in the habit, if I am a woman and I am not in the habit of waking up at night and some transaction request has been made from my account, maybe as a form of spoofed identity at 2 o'clock in the night, or maybe I don't transfer that much volume of the fund, but then why this particular fund is being transferred, this kind of behavioral analysis has been also done by the banks these days. So therefore all these kind of analysis has been done in the real time manner so as to go beyond and look into the things and to unveil the real identity of the person.
Okay. So yeah, so it's about being faster than the fast rapid payments actually at catching them. So I wanted to ask industry associations, like, is there something that you've also been talking about in this what she's been talking about, the behavioral analytics and actually prevention from that point of view of grabbing the payment before it goes through?
No, I think ma'am very aptly, shared with all of us, different initiatives. But in addition to what has been said, yes, when we talk about, frauds, UPI comes first to mind, and which is very true because, I think if we refer to the December data, there are roughly, I think, 21.6 billion transactions for the month of December which have taken place, which is equivalent to roughly 50% of global real-time payments. If I take that number from RBI DG, when he alluded to there are 0.68 is the fraud per 100,000 transactions, roughly 4,800 frauds in a year, which also means that the kind of sentiment it generates and the kind of recourse a customer meets, because unfortunately there are very less, obviously there are processes, but on ground experience has not been very encouraging. That's part one. Now part two, on behavioral biometrics side, yes, I would rather add another dimension to this discussion. Yes, technology is enabler and it is the matter of access to technology. There's a lot of, talk nowadays in ecosystem about artificial intelligence based system, but that AI is accessible to both, to, service providers and to fraudsters both. We also talk about quantum mechanics and quantum technologies, which have a potential to break encryptions, and it is the question of accessibility. Who has that? Now the third piece, which there is a discussion in some quarters in within and outside of India also, is you make technology-based solutions so robust. There's a no need to have a trust. Let technology-based solutions, and I'm alluding to DeFi systems, blockchain technologies, smart contracts. You make it like that. You don't need to have a trust on individuals, or you just trust the systems. Decentralized finance and decentralized technologies. So I think these are the ways to look forward, and I repeat, quantum, smart contracts, blockchain-based technologies, behavioral biometrics, and I think we are progressively moving towards that. I'll just pause here. Thank you.
Okay, if I can just ask Saibal as well as Udish, do you see any, I'll come back to my state because this is something that absolutely fascinates me, but regional variations in how people are, addressing the problem, or even if they have a greater incidence or a greater predisposition towards this?
Definitely, ma'am. There is a great differentiation between the different regions, and it's largely connected to the literacy level, especially in the microfinance space, because there's a vulnerable set of customers, and they're kind of open to the exploitation as well. So we have seen this across. So, for example, if you go to south, these kind of incidents are relatively smaller, but when you come to the other part of the country, the incident levels are slightly on a higher side. The adoption levels are on a slower side. But as I said earlier, also that the aspiration of the customer is pretty high. They want to do this. They are not going away from it. They know that this is the future. They wanted to do the digital transaction. So, as a responsible lender, we have to follow the compliance part of it. That is the most critical. See, what we always see that whatever we do is correct, because we have a very closed view of our own set of customer, maybe as an industry set of customer, but the regulator is having an equal view of what is happening across different industries, different organizations, and they'll be providing that proactive guidelines and direction. So the first thing, I think the most important thing, we need to ensure that compliance is followed very strictly at an organization level. And if you do that, I think we can create some sort of uniformity, but still, I'm agreeing to the fact that this is regional driven, but if you have a uniform policy process and monitoring, I think we can bring down this kind of frauds on a larger extent.
So in our case, what we are seeing from the industry body that, central and north zone, we are seeing little bit more, because this kind of fake app and other things which are there, which we are getting reported to. Apart from that, that it is always linked with the awareness of the client.
Yeah.
So if the clients are aware, if the clients are educated, like in southern India, if you see that one, the level of awareness is high. So they can identify a lot of things which may not be towards eastern, it may not happen. Then also quantum of your transaction is one of the other indicators where there's a probability may be high, where this quantum of this transaction is high. So like this is very interesting that in Bihar you'll be seeing the repayment on tech-based repayment. Tech-based repayment is higher. Now it doesn't mean the people are very aware about that one. They are repaying because it is a remittance-based sector. So that's how the repayment is also high. So these are different dynamics. But we are not seeing that much fraud towards your fraud means these fake apps I'm talking about, fake stuff. We are getting reported mostly your central and northern zone. But it also depends on the awareness of the clients, how fast they can recognize this.
And it's also like if you're looking at the what ma'am was talking about, if the banks and the service providers have to be putting these models and this tech in place, it needs that kind of funding also, that kind of budgeting also, that capacity building within the bank or the thing. So for smaller banks, for cooperative banks, and I'm just going down the level of if you leave the PSUs behind, the large banks, for the smaller banks, it's still going to be a problem. Yeah. So is there anything coming? Do you see any Any trends emerging there?
No, actually, we were discussing this point in the previous session also of RRBs, regional rural banks. So, in that, the commercial banks are the only sponsors of these banks. So, it all depends. But whereas since I have worked previously in Puducherry and in Goa, so there the RRBs used to be quite progressive, as they were, like financed by and also sponsored and supported and assisted by their lead bankers. Which in Goa they were the State Bank of India, and in Puducherry it was the Indian Bank. So they were very comfortable because without these regional rural banks, cooperatives, commercial banks or any other banks will not be able to reach the last mile, and they will not be able to implement the schemes and programs of the government, because ultimately it needs the regional kind of aspirations to reach those local people. The last mile connectivity is very challenging. Executing and implementing the programs, the policy formulation itself, I know it's quite challenging, but more so challenging is the implementation and execution of it. And even if these RRBs or cooperatives or these small farmers organizations, they have not done well so far, but still we have to keep on empowering them, and we have to keep on working with them in order to assist them. So they are being given some kind of funding as a technological support, so that they can reach out to the people. And mobile is the major instrument. 70% of India is using mobile. So we have to create mobile friendly apps, as you also have created. So likewise, the app is the major instrument through which we can reach out to the people, and we have to put the checks and balances depending upon the kind of the data, the crime which is happening, the kind of intensity and the velocity of crime which has happened. So in case where everything is very safe and secure, so maybe I think the system is working well, but where there is a data that the intensity of the crime and the velocity and the quantum and the volumes are too high, then like for example in Gujarat, as I have said, it is leading in terms of all these kind of victimization of fraud through digital payments. So they have to really put more checks and balances into the system. So likewise it is like, and we have to keep on empowering our regional rural banks, because ultimately they are the vehicles through which we are doing the last mile connectivity. Yes.
The vulnerability starts from both the sides. So could we just have a final round of questions as to what do you all think is, for each personally, what do you personally feel is the most critical risk that needs to be addressed? Like where's that emerging threat actually coming from? Because there's such a vast range of, we've discussed so many things. So what would you pinpoint as, we'll start from there, Shaiban.
So my last point will be the demand side centric planning. You have to keep your clients, your target group at the center when you are developing whole ecosystem of checks and balances. Whatever you tell, it has to be very much client centric and your end user centric. Then only everything will work. Work properly. Otherwise, we will be, if it is supply side driven, then it may work, it may not work. But if we like bottom up approach, possibly it would be working across country.
No, I would like to add what we have already discussed is, the more digitization happens, the more we go digital, the intensity of, cyber crimes and frauds is going to increase. Only answer to such kind of issues is technology. Again, as I mentioned earlier, decentralized finances, blockchain-based technologies, smart contracts, quantum computing, and how they are being utilized, and apt guardrails put up by regulators, policymakers. I think these are areas. Probably zero fraud or zero kind of scenario is very rare. We can only mitigate it, and using technology in a much better way. That's the way it's going to be in future, because all of us are connected. There's a digitization that has happened, and hopefully it's going to be in. That's the way it's happening globally.
Maybe the next phase of digitalization growth will come from the Bharat, the Vikasit Bharat, the tier 3 cities. From there, the next phase of growth is going to come, and it has to be a trust-led growth. So if you wanted to build a good ecosystem, it has to be driven by digital literacy training as well as the customer protection.
Last word from you.
Yes. So consumer awareness and awareness of the people, who are at the cutting edge level is very important, and they have their literacy level, digital literacy level have to be increased, and for that the assistance also have to begin. But if we increase the authentication, for example, multi-level authentication, that I am giving the login also, then I will have to go through the biometrics, testing as well. So multi-level authentication also decreases my trust in the system, because it will just create friction. Why do I have to go through so much of friction, and my convenience is really compromised? So therefore, the more responsibility lies with the service providers, with the bankers, as they are the first line of giving the products and services to their, and offer the products and services to their consumers. So public-private partnership is very important, and then at the same time, the point which I have not alluded to in my previous opportunities is that there is very less data sharing around with the institutions. For example, if I am a particular A bank and I have some data of what kind of like the current kind of tests which are being used by these kind of bad guys, and I am not sharing it with the other banks. So so that they can also update their data. So data governance takes a very key role, and that AI governance also, that whatever systems which I am using, it is explainable, it is authentic, it is validated. So all these kind of things also have to be taken into account. So it is a constant improvement process, and then, but the consumer protection is of immense importance, and I think the government has created the fund also, but it has to be made more robust, and it has to be made more strengthened, so that I am compensated for the loss which I have experienced while I was doing the digital transaction.
I think that collaboration point and data sharing is really important, because as the system grows, it's also important to know what are the different emerging trends and what is actually happening in real time. Is not happening yet. Okay, that's great. Okay, thank you very much. I wasn't even looking at this, but we seem to have reached the end. Okay, any questions from the audience, please? None? Yes?
Hi, thank you for the opportunity. This question is to Jaiswal ma'am. One thing I've heard or learned from the news items is that this velocity you mentioned, right? Like once a fraudulent transaction takes place, then immediately the fund is transferred to multiple accounts, etc. So from my perspective, it is very easy for a regulator to actually step in and stop at checkpoints, so that this kind of velocity in this fraudulent transaction is stopped. So is there any genuine other things, like as a layman, that public is not aware, which is stopping the regulator from taking such a step?
Yeah, this is a very relevant question, I must say, because this is the question in the minds of everyone. That because this is, if I am using UPI in the form of maybe QR codes, if NFC near field communications, or maybe mobile wallets, or any kind of digital payment method that maybe it is devised. So it is very easy. But when I am using the UPI, and once I am in two parties, they are entering into a transaction, it will settle within maybe 1 minute. 1 minute it will settle. Now the government regulator, they have just devised few rules and regulations. Then you will use the biometrics, OTPs. You will do multi-factor authentication and validation while entering into the transaction. But then later on, when I realize, after it has already been settled, that yes, it will take only half a minute for the transaction to settle in the UPI. So what will now, there is no way out. There is only way out. There is no way out to retrieve it. The only thing is now that the government will either reimburse through that fund, consumer protection fund, or maybe treating it as a liability, or maybe the bank will also share some kind of, this kind of retrievement of those kind of lost funds. So whatever real-time analysis that you have to do in those 50 seconds, will only matter. Otherwise, once the transaction is settled, there is no way how you can retrieve it. Only it can be retrieved through consumer, liability, the fund which is created by the government. So this is the responsibility of the service providers to activate their systems in those 50 seconds. Yeah, 50 seconds is the limit. Some service providers are even giving the real-time analysis of 10 seconds. But then in India, we are keeping the timeline of 50 seconds. In that 50 seconds, we have to manage the service providers. They have to come out with the various kind of apps and various kind of, systems so as to update it and to scan it, whether this is a fake or this is a real transaction. Otherwise, then, we will go through all these kind of process. And as per the latest data, to retrieve $1 of loss, the banks are spending $8. And sometimes it is not retrievable also.
If I can just add to what ma'am was saying, is that the RBI has just begun the initiative for identifying mule accounts to find out which are the accounts which are actually behaving like this, to take it to the next, moving ahead from there. So that analysis, like ma'am was saying about data sharing also between the banks, that is in process. I mean, they can find out what the mule account is, who started it or whatever. That's after the whole payment has gone through.
That is an enforcement.
Yeah, that's the next step. That's the next step.
30 seconds, if nothing is done, then nothing is we cannot retrieve. Yes. Data gap is there. You can please
Take the mic.
There is also a data gap to understand this one. The other thing I wanted to, put on the table that, the switch of UPI is NPCI, right? Now, I was talking to NPCI and asking them that you are giving us the volume of the transaction. Can you give me the unique, this unique consumer data, like how many people actually doing it? Maybe I was doing one transaction, now I'm doing 10 transactions with the volume, but I couldn't get that one. So, if we build up the ratios also of the fraud or anything, we have to get that unique data. Unique consumer data is still, we are not getting it. We have to do that one. Otherwise, there will be a big gap. We will be understanding something, possibly it is much more than that. What do you think?
So yeah, on both sides.
Yeah.
People who are doing, the victims as well as from the ones from where it's going through.
Right.
Great, yeah. Thanks. Somebody else at the back.
I think it's. We can.
The last question then.
Is it on? Hi panel, this is Kajal. I just wanted to know from Jaiswal ma'am, the fake UPI payments are in trend right now. Like people have fake scanners or fake app बना लिया उन्होंने, they pay through that. जिनके पास डिजिटल लिटरेसी नहीं है, उन्हें पता नहीं चलता, उनको हम स्कैन वो करके शो करते हैं कि येस वी पेड, उन्हें लगता है कि उनके बैंक अकाउंट में पैसे आ गए, बट बाद में वो चेक करते हैं तो वो पैसे नहीं होते. हाउ टू डील विद दैट, द कंज्यूमर एज वेल एज द वन हु गॉट इनटू दैट थिंग.
So you want a helpline kind of?
I mean, they don't know how to deal with it. So I want to know.
Yeah, there are many helplines which are created by the government. So first of all, after the things have taken place, then you can always go to these helplines and they will help you in retrieving it. So the systems will come into motion, the enforcement agencies will help you out. You can go to the cybercrime police stations and you can register a report there. But in cybercrime, all these crime are of the nature that prevention is always better, because these are the organized crime. As our panelist, Mr. Jitendra, has said, that they are the very big frauds, organized crimes. And they are working in a very, very organized manner across international borders. So there has been a treaty by the government to enter into an agreement with all the member state countries so as to share the data. But still, it is a long-drawn process. But then prevention is always better than cure. So to answer your question very shortly, there are only two ways out. One is that you will get the payment for the liability or for the loss that you have suffered from the government fund.
Right.
You apply for that.
Right.
Okay. Now, the secondly is that the consumer awareness. The awareness is the only way out, but I think you will get the reimbursement for the fraud that has occurred with you.
Right. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, all of you and the panelists, for a really great discussion. And it is, it's never ending, probably evolving, because the topic itself is ever evolving and changing. So thank you everyone, and thanks Access.
Yes. I'm sure this session would have resonated very well with everyone, because everyone is part of the problem and solution. Yeah. So very interesting discussions. Thanks Sumita for the depth moderation, and thanks panelists for this interest, creating the interest in the audience. Thanks audience for all the engagement and all. We'll go for the next thing. Thank you. Thank you so much.